Hi, this is episode number 5 with Dimitri Majanis. And today we're going to be talking about the disintegration group from Tuesday night, August 6th. And we're going to be talking about how do you decide if it's the right time for you to try psychedelics, and if you already have tried it, how do you decide if it's time to do it again? Okay, Dimitri, take it away.
Yeah, so last night there was a good session. That question was posed, and I think it's there's no one answer for it. For somebody who's coming to it for the first time, um, usually there's just a few. I'd say maybe three. Three is always good, right? We're in a baseball culture, so everything's three.
Okay,
I often thought if just to digress right off the bat.
go for it.
Right off the bat, there's another one, dude. Right off the bat, I think that if baseball had 4 strikes, our prison population would be far less.
Do you think so? Oh,
Yeah, the
okay.
3-strike law. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Just a thought. I guess there's people who are coming because they are seeking to be healed. They're looking for a healing from some sort of physical or usually emotional or spiritual suffering. There are people that come because they are not so much suffering, but lacking. So they're on a spiritual quest. And there are people that come because they're curious. More often I deal with the first two. So my question to someone, usually falls in those categories is like, why are you coming? Like, what is the motivation for you to be here, and what do you hope to get out of it? And so for the first timers, I think that the real practical questions that have to be asked right off the bat are the medical questions. Are you able to do psychedelics? So there are medicines and conditions that preclude you from doing it. For instance, SSRIs and other psych meds would either dampen or completely nullify a psychedelic experience. And then there is certain psychedelics that there's concern about serotonin uptake. And I'm sure I'm saying it completely wrong, but too much serotonin. That could be potentially dangerous. So that's the first question. Are you on meds? Why are you on meds? And then for folks who are on meds, the question becomes, whether it's useful or whether it's a good idea to get off the meds, because there are people who stabilize on SSRIs. I mean, I might have personal opinions on it, but who cares? I mean, people's experience are their experience, and there's I think I don't know if it's half the people or some large percentage of the people actually benefit, even in comparison to the strongest drug there is, placebo. They still do well. So the idea is, like, you're suffering. Are the SSRIs helping you? If they're not helping you, what is a prudent and wise way of weaning down? So the best advice from the people I trust the most, medical professionals, say that folks should be off for at least a month to 6 weeks. And that's like off. So then there's the weaning down, which takes a long time. So that's got to be addressed in a very sober and serious way, because weaning off these things are not easy. And even if they're not helpful, the withdrawal from them can be difficult. So that's something to look into. So someone's not finding that the SSRIs are helpful or other meds are helpful, then it's got to be really sort of thought out coming off. Now, for folks who feel that they have been helpful, sort of like when I'm talking to people about Ibogaine, if they're on replacement therapy, I don't forget what the fucking it's replacement therapy. You're replacing one thing with the other, which by the way, is not a bad thing. Just like crutches, a crutch is not a bad thing. You know, I don't know what the fucking politically correct fucking term for it is. But anyway, for people who are on like methadone or Suboxone, like, is it a good idea for you to get off? Why do you want to get off? What would it look like if you got off? The same questions around SSRIs and other psych meds. Like, what is it doing for you? What was it like before you did it? What could possibly happen in the meantime? Because basically we're going into the area of psychedelic space, which is a fucking crapshoot. So you don't want to tell anyone to get off their fucking psych med. Now, there's a lot of people out there that, you know, call themselves, I don't know what they call themselves, but they're supposedly looking at something from a holistic point of view. A holistic point of view would also include Western pharmacopoeia, and whether you like Pfizer or not, if you say holistic, it also includes Pfizer and its products, okay? So, you know, so that's a sober, serious conversation that is not to be entered into lightly. So that's the first thing, you know, are you able? There's also contraindications in terms of health. There are people who, you know, have heart conditions, and, you know, even psilocybin has an effect on the heart. MDMA certainly does. 5-MeO is cardiotoxic and can be really dangerous for some folks. Ibogaine is cardiotoxic. It can be really dangerous for some folks. That's just one example. I mean, you really got to ask those questions. Is it safe? Does it make sense? And what do you hope to get out of it? Those are folks who are coming in out of desperation. And I think that that's got to be mitigated, because we cause a lot of damage and a lot of hurt by raising expectations and always looking to the most ideal of outcomes. Every human being is different, biologically and biographically. And so we have to acknowledge that. And so those are the things to think about if you're suffering from Great Depression. If you're feeling that there's this sort of an emptiness and you're at a point in your life, so say a transition, either through age or a new career or children coming or children going or a relationship going, I think that often, if you don't have some of the other things we were talking about, and I also should mention there's folks that have psychological issues that would make, I don't think with schizophrenia should be taking these medications. Although there are people out there in the psychedelic world that swears that they have cured people. I think it's a fucking crapshoot. So be careful. You know, if you've had psychic breaks, you know, be careful. So let's say that all that has been cleared and you're on the second category and you're someone who's looking for that transitional period. Sorry to digress. You know, they're looking for an exploration. I think if you don't have a lot of dangers with the other stuff that we talk about, or you're not in danger, I think it's a really good idea. Done, you know, in a way that suits you, whether by yourself or with friends or with a guide. So, and then for people who are just interested in the spiritual exploration to try to get closer to a connection with oneness or with Jesus or God or Jehovah or the singularity or whatever it is, I think it's an excellent way to explore those spaces. So that's people coming for the first time. And then the idea of like, when do we do it again? You know, which was talked about in the group. And I think really seriously, there's one of our regulars. He was thinking about going into an experience again. But the way he did it, because he's a religious guy and a spiritual guy, and he had to have real serious prayer. That's what he does before. He prays on whether it's a good idea. And this time it said no. And he was really, his prayer, the results of his prayer was not a good idea to do it again. And he was really disappointed. But that's his barometer. There was another guy, another regular in our group who I really like. And I like him because he's also sort of on a class that just, you know, he's come to psychedelics without anybody like me, without any of the fucking guys, the way that it was found in our indigenous culture. That is the Western indigenous culture of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or sex, drugs, and house. or sex, drugs, and techno or electronic or sex, drugs, and punk or funk or whatever you want to say, or hip hop or whatever you want to say, our indigenous tradition of drug taking. And I think there's a spirituality on it. He comes from the electronic music scene. And, he never gave it much thought. He did it because it was there. And now he's a little bit older and he's thinking about it more in terms of context. I just read a great article in the New York Times, an interview with Santana. God, I got to find that quote. I wish it was in front of me. Basically about him playing at Woodstock, and Jerry Garcia, who I don't music, but he seems was like a great human being, right? Jerry Garcia just gave him some mescaline, and he thought he didn't have to go on until 2 a.m. It turned out they put him on at 2 p.m. So Santana's sort of legendary set at Woodstock, he was tripping fucking balls. And there's a great little quote. I'm glad it's in the Times, because the quote is something like, "As in all things, whether in life or with mescaline, one has to find balance."
That's great.
Finding balance playing at Woodstock tripping. I think we should put that somewhere on the website because it's a great quote. I digress, but those are the occasion for celebration is an occasion to do it. It is legitimate. Some people, when they say, "Oh, just recreationally," like sort of toss it out recreationally, which still to me has a bit of capitalist undertone, because it's now recreation vehicles, right? A rec room, right? You know what I mean? This is like, man, celebrate, explore, hang out with friends, trip. So, with him, it wasn't this big fucking thing. You did it, because, he would just explain his last time he was at a festival and he did his set. He's a musician, he's a DJ, and he was out in the Redwoods and it was time to do some acid. Seems like a legitimate reason to me. And then, there were people really struggling with it. When is the good time? When does it become that crutch? And again, crutch used as a pejorative, which I fucking hate. Fucking crutches are so fucking important. I don't know if anyone's broke their leg, stubbed their toe. How grateful are you for crutches?
Yeah.
But that idea that like they're using it as, I don't know what, like outside of like sort of a sacred healing tool. And there is something that we can get to, that we got to it, that we can talk about. But so people really think about it. When does it become habitual? There are folks who are constantly in ceremony. I mean, there are people who are part of, religious groups. Santa Daimon, excuse me. Bwiti, even though Bwiti swears it's not religion, I mean, if you look at the definition of religion, it's a religion, including with its hierarchy and shaming and all that. But, in Bwiti, you do a boga a lot, just because it's the day to do a boga. You do it all the time. And there are people that are constantly going back and doing Aya sessions, 3 times a week, to all kinds of results. So that there is the religious, or how can I say? Well, it's religious. So I'm just going to say it's religious, or communal, religious and communal ingestion, cultural ingestion outside of, let's say, strictly a celebratory context, which would be the club, the festival. So, so there's that, so it's sort of there all the time. So it's prescriptive. You go and you do it because that's what you do. The answer, and look, there's been people I know that have done the latter, the two latter, the sort of the club celebratory context, and then the ritualized communal context. 2 great results, and then 2 really disastrous results. I mean, I see people doing Aya all the time who are really spinning out. And I see people do Aya all the time who are onto something and changing their life in a really beautiful and positive way. This is not formulaic.
So someone who is coming to you asking for advice about, is it time to do it again? How do you help them to make that decision?
I can't help, but I can support a conversation.
Okay.
What I would just ask, why? What's going on in your life? What is the impact on your life? I mean, in terms of, all kinds of impact, real practical impacts, like how much does it cost? You got the money for that right now. Can you take the time off of work? Your kids got, your kids got babysitters, whatever the practical implication of that. So, why are you doing it? Would it deepen the work that you're doing? If let's say you're going into it for work, like, deepen what you're doing it? Would it confuse or muddle? Have you processed it to your liking? Have you processed the last ones or the accumulative of the last? Also, know that because we don't know what can happen, it could also be a damaging experience. You could experience some trauma. You can experience things that are just fucking confusing. Are you in a place for that? Are you willing to take that risk? If people are coming like, should I trip next Thursday night? I'm like, yeah, who's playing? How much you're going to do? Those are serious questions too,
Now, are you of the opinion that, because you just mentioned bad experiences, now using the word bad experience, could there also be some good that comes out of a bad experience?
So I used to say there was no bad trip, and I'd like to apologize to everyone for that. I don't know. This is how we're going to contextualize everything, right? We're going to contextualize it that there's a good that's going to come out of it. Not always. What we can do, I'm in the coffee shop, you can hear it. What we can do is we can contextualize. And we can hopefully turn a bad thing and mine for something, but some shit is just straight up bad. And there is a tendency as folks idealize the psychedelic experience, as they fetishize not only the drugs, the medicines, but also the drug givers, the space holders, the so-called shamans or curandero or healers, as they fetishize and as that domination system, the inevitable domination system of hierarchy evolves from that, there is a gaslighting of people's experience.
What does that
complete
mean?
Gaslighting came out of I think it came out of
the
movie. Where I think it's been used in feminist theory and critique, and increasingly used used to discount women's experiences, but also it's sort of broad now to discount whoever's experience: black people, brown people, queer people, and then it's a discounting of experience, especially a traumatic experience. It's a discounting, and not only discounting, it's causing my understanding of the term, it's a practice of making the person who are saying it feel that they're crazy, wrong, or have done something wrong.
Okay.
So like I guess the 101 is, what were you wearing if a woman was, harassed on the street? You know what I mean? And I didn't see that. What are you talking about? You're at work and a black colleague says something about a racist colleague. I didn't see that. You're crazy. You know what I mean? So, but if you extend that to the psychedelic space, people who have had really bad experience are told there's no such thing as a bad trip. You didn't listen to the medicine. You didn't let go. You gotta trust the process. Trusting the process. I don't even know what that fucking means, especially in that context. Trusting the process. I mean, I think when a bad experience happens, you need to, that people have had a bad time, that it was fucking awful, And if there is some way to make something good out of that, then sure, but not at the price of discounting what they had experienced and turning them into a liar and shaming them.
So somebody who has had a bad experience and they were talking about wanting to maybe try it again, or what kind of advice would you say or give to somebody that said, listen, I had a bad experience last time. I'm not sure if I want to do it again, but I think there might be some value in doing it again.
I'd ask them about the value, you know. I'd also talk to them about their last experience, what happened in it. Let them know that it's, 99.9% not their fault.
Okay.
I'd ask them about dosage in the last experience. Maybe they want to try less. Maybe they want to try a different medicine. Maybe they want to say what was the space like this experience, and if it was a good dose and a good space with a good sitter or a good person they're doing it with, and it happened. And we just have to acknowledge that, set and setting is really important.
Okay.
Really important.
Are you of the belief that a good sitter can help turn a bad experience into a good experience or a better experience? Like, how much do you think a sitter influences whether or not it's a good or a bad experience?
Look, let me just finish. That's a good question. There is, set and setting is really important. The sitter is really important. The intention is really important. There's also a crapshoot in taking these drugs that could take, in combination of where you're at the moment, what's happening physiologically in your body, chemically, I don't fucking know. But there's some shit that's just going to be bad. Now, I am a firm believer that a sitter and the set and setting and the ambiance, the ethos of a place can totally fuck you up. That is for sure. And I also believe that a comfortable, safe space with someone who you trust or who can build trust and who knows how to get somebody to mitigate it can make scary situations less scary.
Yeah.
And make you feel comfortable and, help you. I've been in circles where they just tell you, shh, literally. I mean, and that's the tradition.
Okay.
And, I think that, we need to respect tradition and respect people who are the traditional holders of the sacred medicine, and respect them in giving them humanity and telling them, like, why don't you shut the fuck up with your stupid fucking advice? Shut up. Listen to the medicine. Anyway, so.
Okay. So.
Excuse me. I'm being. Look, this guy. Pardon me? Okay, all right. Anyway, I was just being told that I couldn't say. What was the word I shouldn't say? What shouldn't I say? Okay, all right. Just play. Anyway.
What's the word you can't say?
Shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck
up. I said one fucking fuck and you went crazy. Okay, I'll stop saying fuck. Okay. It's my favorite coffee shop. Anyway, but there's a way to screw it up, and then not to. So I'll just tell you what happened. I had a recent experience some days ago, not that long ago, where a guy was freaked out. He had never done psychedelics before, none of the pre-existing conditions we had talked about, and he went into it and then just sat up going, wow, 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 and he was panicky. And didn't really know where he was, where I was, who he was. And so it was just a matter of, contextualizing it as best as possible and making him feel safe.
Okay.
Walking
through that moment?
Yeah, through breath and just assuring them that they're here, that they're safe, who I am, who he is. And the great thing was I would explain it to him, explain where we were. And after he was sort of really out of the panic but confused, he would go through it all, and then he would ask you to sit there, and he'd say, and why are we doing this again? It's just like, well, I couldn't really answer.
And now after
But,
that
but yeah,
moment, what was the experience like after that moment?
oh,
Did
he
it
was
turn
able to
out
go
to be
back in. Yeah, it passed. It was a long time though. This was, you know, I mean, I've been in Ibogaine situations where that lasted for days. So, psilocybin and MDMA and other quicker acting medicines are not as heavy. But yeah, at about an hour, he was fine, back with the blindfolds,
okay?
into his experience, listening to sounds.
Okay. So when he came out of it, does he now remember this situation or this experience as a good experience?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah, he does.
okay.
He does.
So there's a good example of how a good sitter is able to turn a bad moment in a situation, turn it around, and the overall experience is now a good experience.
Yes, but there are some times where people are just in their thing, and the only thing you can do is just let them know that there's someone here with them.
Yeah.
And that was more of a panic. There's some folks that get into serious darkness, and you can talk to them about it if they want to talk. I don't know if it's the job to steer out of necessarily, but just to be present and act on instinct and experience.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have a formula for that.
Okay. So it sounds like more like a guide. So you
A guide, yeah.
were able to
I mean, look,
guide
the guy who was praying about whether to go ahead. I mean, I know he had a bad experience, maybe 2 experiences ago, and I think he's had some good ones since. And you know, so he went back and had some good ones since.
Okay.
You know, what they're really grappling with is someone who I don't want to say serious, which means that it's any more of a higher quality to take something seriously. I don't think it's serious as any more higher quality than it's, you know, Friday night, Flatbush Zombies are playing, you know? I mean, that's as good as reason as anything, you know? But someone who's in it, you know, for healing, what they're really looking at is this going to help or hurt, basically.
Right.
And I don't know if there's an answer for that every time. There isn't. I don't believe it's always good.
Okay. So would it be accurate to say that you don't necessarily give people advice, but you offer them a safe place to talk through it on their own and have them come up with their own decision whether?
Yeah. Well, I give people advice who are on meds or on cardio or have some psychological break. I give advice. Hell no, don't do it.
Yeah.
Or if they're doing well on their meds.
With those, that notwithstanding. So if somebody
I don't give advice otherwise.
Issue, doesn't have psychotic
no.
episodes, you talk them. You allow them to have a safe place to process their thoughts. They come up with a decision on their own.
That's the idea.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the idea.
All right. Well, and so last night's session, was there any kind of I don't want to use the word breakthrough, but I'm trying to come up with another word. Like, what did you take away from last night's session? Is there, like, if there's one?
You know, something that often happens in those sessions is that, you know, it's so different. You know, I'm listening to on the Miracle of YouTube. I'm listening to William James' Variety of Religious Experiences, and it's just that it's a variety of experience, and there's no right path. But for a lot of folks, not for everyone, community is really important, and to be able to talk about these things and process these things in a communal atmosphere. And one thing I got to say, one thing that came up is there was a mother of 2 young children. She's also someone doing good in the world in her profession. But she doesn't got a lot of time or money, and so, you know, I don't know, that it's a completely non-esoteric question, but, like, you know, I think there are some folks. My friend Jonathan in Michigan talks about psychedelic parenting. But yeah, I mean, stuff like we these practical things like childcare, what to do with the kids, but, you know, and so that was kind of interesting.
What to do with the kids
when you're tripping.
Okay, so you choose to use the medicine, and how do you take care of
Yeah. Stuff like that. But those are, you know, she's trying to find a time.
Okay. Now has this?
Yeah,
So she
you got
was
two.
in your
You got
session
kids. You
last
got
night.
three, right, man? You know.
Yeah, I got three.
Yeah, yeah,
So this woman was in your session last night.
yeah,
And she has experience with psychedelics?
yeah.
Okay. And was she talking about whether or not should I do it again? Or should she?
Yeah. But like the big thing is for her, it's simply practical. It's time, and I think that's something that is sort of missing the nuts and bolts. I talked a little bit about this with my friend Julie Holland on my podcast. She's a great psychiatrist, and the practicalities of if this shit gets put into the existing structure, like how does this stuff happen? I mean, who pays for it? I'm getting really into the nitty gritty. I mean, insurance. Does insurance pay for it? Who's qualified to do it? And then what do you do with the kids? What do you do afterwards? How do you drive home? I mean, all this kind of stuff that, but for her, it was like, yeah, how does she find? And like, the thing about to a space like that is that, there's conversations start to develop. There's, maybe there needs to be some sort of psychedelic daycare, for when this happens. I mean, look, in traditional cultures
you have to be careful how you name that. Psychedelic.
Yeah.
Daycare.
Well, the kids are already tripping, but hey, man, I've been in situations in Gabon and in Peru where kids were tripping.
Really? Okay, so they're giving the medicine to young. How young?
1.
No. How does it, but a 1-year-old child can't process that in any way, shape, or form. I mean, because
I think maybe they're already processing.
At that age, I mean, their brainwave frequency, I think it's in the gamma, where they don't even have the ability to have knowledge that there's something outside of.
Okay, you're right. Maybe there were 2. Maybe there were 2, but I've seen Todd do it. I mean, I had some judgment till I didn't have any judgment on it. I don't at this point. I mean, a lot of them, I was like watching, I've seen it with, some kids, the kid is like, yeah, like the 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. The older, yeah. And there's the other ones that's just like, that look of like, I gotta go to grandma's, it's like,
yeah.
Right? They put out their hand and they gotta eat this shit.
Uh-huh. Oh my goodness.
But I've seen kids who love it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That'd be interesting. Maybe we talk about that on another one of these shows. But
yeah, I want to unequivocally say, give this to your children.
You want to say that, or you don't want to say that?
I do.
All right, maybe we put a disclaimer.
No.
All right, so this was in your disintegration group that you have every Tuesday night, right?
Every Tuesday night at 23rd Street. Yeah.
What's the address?
I think it's 116 West 116 West 23rd Street, 5th floor. Ask for the group.
What time?
7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. It's $30. Yeah.
Okay.
Really good. Open heart.
They can go to your website, and if they're watching,
go to my website.
It's probably on your website. So that's good. All right. So this would be a good place to stop. So thank you very much, Dimitri, and looking forward to next week and hearing how the next disintegration session goes.
Keep disintegrating.
There you go.
Tagline.
Bye-bye.
Bye.